Greece, a symbol of European civilization. It's where the very idea of democracy began. But for the past few years, the Greek people have lived through restless times. They've watched as their economy hit free fall. They've felt financial pain and political uncertainty.
This is the symbol for us, Golden Dawn, for every Greek nationalist.
Some looked inwards and blamed their own actions. Others blamed their creditors, the powerful institution known as the Troika. I'm Imran Garda, and I've come to Greece to find out how 8 years of austerity and bailouts have affected the 11 million people of this extraordinary country.
Three people died when protesters firebombed a bank.
The Greek government has voted for a series of austerity measures.
Breaking news overnight that will come as a big relief. European leaders have agreed to a last-minute deal to prevent Greece from going bankrupt.
In 2009, Greece's prime minister at the time was forced to admit his country was in big trouble. It owed tens of billions of euros to foreign creditors.
Won't put the burden on people, it'll put the burden on cutting down the waste and making things much more transparent.
A rescue plan was hatched by the so-called Troika, the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. The conditions of the bailout were strict austerity measures.
Austerity measures decided by Greece are necessary for its own economy.
To ordinary Greeks, this meant having your salary cut by 40% if you were a school teacher, your pension slashed in half. If you relied on social housing, pack your bags. It's time to fend for yourself. And if you got sick, well, that's when the agony of austerity really set in.
Είχαμε μία εξάπλωση των αυτοκτονιών, κυρίως νέων ανθρώπων. Έχασαν τις δουλειές τους και άφησαν τεράστια χρέη στις τράπεζες.
This man is not a pharmacist. He's not a doctor. Dimitris Soliotis is a retired sailor. He now runs a social pharmacy on the outskirts of Athens. It's a place where locals go to get medicines they can no longer afford.
Όταν ξέσπασε η κρίση, είχαμε συνείδηση ότι έρχεται μια πολύ μεγάλη δύσκολη περίοδο για τη χώρα μας. Και ξέραμε και από το παρελθόν ότι μετά το φαγητό και το νερό ως προϋπόθεση ζωής είναι ο γιατρός και το φάρμακο. Μαζευτήκαμε ορισμένοι φίλοι και αποφασίσαμε να φτιάξουμε ένα κοινωνικό ιατρείο φαρμακείο του Βύρωνα που είχε σαν σκοπό να δίνει σε όλους τους ανασφάλιστους και τους άπορους και άνεργους της εποχής εκείνης να δίνει δωρεάν φάρμακα. Βλέπετε όλα αυτά τα φάρμακα που βλέπετε εδώ είναι έργο των φαρμακείων αλλά και των πολιτών.
Dimitris and his allies are filling the gaps of a healthcare system they believe is failing Greeks. A punishment for a sin they say they never committed.
Obviously there's a system here. You guys are organized.
Yes.
So it's alphabetic and
alphabetic series, and the other boxes are the essences of the medicines.
Are you happy about your system and your pharmacy?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, very happy. And nobody has died.
Nobody.
Ωραία. Που είναι τίποτα αυτό. Λοιπόν, το δώσαμε το μισό των ουγιόλ, έτσι, το άλλο το ντουφαλάκ, έτσι. Λοιπόν, αυτό είναι ολόκληρο.
How important is it that there is something like this for people here in Athens?
Είναι πολύ σημαντικό για τους άνεργους, για τους συνταξιούχους, για χαμηλούς συνταξιούχους, ότι μπορεί καθένας παρέχει δηλαδή.
Και τα μαρτύρια τα οποία περνάει ο ελληνικός λαός δέεται με βαριές ευθύνες της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης. Είμαστε οντότητες ενός μετώπου αλληλεγγύης ενάντια στις πολιτικές, τις βάρβαρες πολιτικές αυτές που έχουν καταστρέψει τη χώρα μας και το λαό μας. Πολλά νοσοκομεία δεν έχουν τα στοιχειώδη εφόδια, ακόμα και κουβέρτες. Η μεγαλύτερη τραγωδία της Ελλάδας είναι ο Ευρυπίδης, ο Σοφοκλής και ο Αισχύλος. Και πρέπει να σου πω ότι αυτή η τραγωδία που περνάει σήμερα ο λαός μας υπερβαίνει και αυτούς τους αρχαίους Έλληνες τραγωδούς.
For one man, these are not just symptoms of an economic pinch. It's a humanitarian crisis.
1/3 of the Greek labor force today lives on 380 euros a month. Tens of thousands of companies have either closed down since 2015 or moved to Bulgaria or to Cyprus. Half of the graduates of medical schools left the country. The Troika, who inflicted a huge cost on the Greek public, they are the ones who caused effectively the loss of 2 generations in Greece.
In 2015, seeking change, Greeks elected a populist leftist government, Syriza. For the role of finance minister, Syriza turned to an economist. Not quite obscure, but not a politician, not even a party member. Yanis Varoufakis.
Here's your imagination.
A disobedient outsider. His mandate? To negotiate a better deal with the Troika. Maybe even give them a bloody nose. I needed to meet this man.
You know, because I was elected by desperate people to put an end to their debt bondage. When you're bankrupt, you've got to declare your bankruptcy. The only way of not declaring your bankruptcy is by pretending you're not bankrupt, by borrowing even more money and becoming even more bankrupt. I was a minister who was saying, I don't want more loans from you because this will be pushing or pouring good money after bad into the black hole of the Greek debt. What I want is a rational economic plan so that you stop this silly process which is costing you and it's costing us.
For Varoufakis, bankruptcy was a more humane alternative to what he calls debtor's prison. His critics saw him as irrational, reckless even. At its core, he says Greece was being sacrificed to bail out the French and German banks, and that money coming in as new loans was tainted.
If Greece had declared its bankruptcy because a lot of those loans were owed to the French banks, then the French banks would simply fall over immediately. And then the French state would have to give something like 50% of national income to 2 banks. And of course that cannot happen, especially if you don't have printing presses. So in a state of panic, like Macbeth in the early part of the play, they committed a crime against logic by giving Greece, bankrupt Greece, the largest loan in human history.
In 2010, the Troika gave Greece 110 billion euros. They took on more and more debt as their people's struggles continued. Greece now owes over 320 billion euros. Lending out money you know you can't get back from the debtor was what the banks did in the late 2000s. And it triggered the global financial crisis, with borrower and lender caught in a debilitating dance of economic ruin. And it's now here in Greece, a decade later, where it feels like we've come full circle. Greeks who can't pay their mortgages are having their homes auctioned off. The streets pulse with protests. And if the riot police aren't enough to prevent the transaction, under the orders of the Troika, the auctions now happen online. At a click of a button, a notary inside these offices authorizes the auctions. But that doesn't stop activists like Tonia Katarini from making their voices heard.
Now tell me, what is this about?
In the office of a notary, which is called Zagana, many auctions are taking place. One of them is about a house of 56 square meters, and we are here trying to push the notary and try to save the house of this family.
Okay, if I can't afford my mortgage, the bank is going to take my house away from me. That's life. Why is it different in Greece?
In 2010, many people had loans, but only 5% didn't pay for their loans. Now the people that they are not paying for their loans are 50%. So this is a result of the crisis.
Το 56 τετραγωνικών μέτρων, η οποία αποτελεί και πρώτη κατοικία.
The banks have already been supported with our money 3 times. We should protect the people and not only the bank.
Take the Greek word demos, which means the common people, and kratos, strength in English, and you have demokratia. This place is the cradle of democracy. But when I talk to people like Tonia, I wonder whether the events of the past 8 years have fueled a new chapter in Greece, maybe even hurt that demokratia.
$100 billion, that's what some people want you to be held accountable for, because they believe you were negotiating and negotiating and negotiating when there was an inevitability to this third bailout.
At least 1/3 of our debt, which is 100 billion, is unpayable. So what happens if you have an unpayable debt? There are only 2 options within the realm of possibility. One is that it will be cut. Bankers, every day, restructure those debts and accept haircuts so as to get something back rather than nothing back. Or the only other alternative is to borrow it, like getting another credit card to pay off a first credit card. The 100 billion that they pinned on me was that unpayable debt, which I insisted should be haircut, and they insisted that it should be rolled over and put on the weakened shoulders of the Greek taxpayers.
Like Yanis, many here blame the Europeans for the mess they're in. But Greece also played its part. For years, successive governments borrowed and spent enormous sums of money. Corruption and tax evasion were rife. Shipping magnates even have their exemptions written into the constitution.
How did Greece get to that point of economic crisis?
There was a huge public sector not functioning very efficiently. There was clientelism, corruption, an inefficient economy, which was spending too much. The country was almost on autopilot. And then we had a European and global economic crisis, and the country was not prepared to deal with the problem.
The European perspective, or the northwestern European perspective, is that why should we pay for the Greeks being lazy and corrupt and living above their means for so many years? Why are we footing the bill?
For every irresponsible borrower, there has to exist an irresponsible lender. If I were to say to you, give me $1 million because I want to buy a house or to live the good life, and you gave it to me, you're just as much to blame for the mess that we will end up with. Christine Lagarde, in our first meeting, at the end of a long meeting with aides and so on, she told me what really matters when it was just the 2 of us. She said, look, Yanis, you're absolutely right. This program, the one that she was trying to impose upon me, together with the rest of the Troika, can't work for your country. We know that. But you've got to understand, we have invested so much political capital in this so that we cannot go back.
In times of economic crisis, nations are often tempted to swing sharply to the right. squeeze a society tight enough, and the intolerant fringe takes a few steps towards an ever more vacant middle. Greece's far right is called Golden Dawn, and Ilias Kassidiaris is the face of the party.
This is the press office of Golden Dawn. I cannot understand why the Greek government gives to our party the smallest offices in the parliament.
The first time I saw that, the symbol of your party, as an outsider, I automatically went, it's a variation of the swastika.
This is the symbol for us, Golden Dawn, for every Greek nationalist, is the symbol of the ancient Greek civilization. Right.
But the point is that any organization that, I guess, was born after 1945 would be a little bit more cautious about.
But we don't use swastika.
Varoufakis.
Yes.
He calls Golden Dawn Nazis in his book. He just calls you Nazis, flat out. Is that fair, accurate?
Σίγουρα αυτό δεν είναι δίκαιο και σωστό, αλλά επειδή δεν έχουν άλλα επιχειρήματα, η κομμουνιστική αριστερά δεν έχει κανένα επιχείρημα απέναντι στη Χρυσή Αυγή, χρησιμοποιούν μονίμως αυτή την καραμέλα, δηλαδή ναζί, ναζί, ναζί.
Okay, so let me take the term, adjust it. Some others use neo-Nazi. Is that accurate?
No.
Fascist? Nothing?
Όπως σας είπα, ο εθνικισμός είναι η ιδεολογία μας. Απορρίπτουμε όλη αυτή την ορολογία περί ναζισμού, φασισμού, ρατσισμού.
For some, crisis also means opportunity. Largely unknown and with little support, the events of the past 8 years have catapulted Ilias and his colleagues to becoming Greece's third largest party.
We care about drama, θέατρο. Για χαρά, τι γίνεται, καλά.
So he's a supporter?
Yes.
And atop their agenda is removing all immigrants from Greece by force if necessary.
Illegal immigration out! Out of my country! Out of my home!
It seems as if you only care about people who are pure Greek or ethnic Greek, and I don't even know what that means.
Νομίζω ότι ήμουν σαφής. Έλληνας είναι αυτός που οι γονείς του είναι Έλληνες. Και για αυτούς νοιαζόμαστε. Αν κάποιος δηλαδή έρθει αυτή τη στιγμή ως πρόσφυγας από τη Συρία και λάβει ελληνική ταυτότητα, αυτομάτως για μας δεν είναι Έλληνας.
So you're number 3 right now, right? If you come to number 1, can Greece still be a society that's safe for immigrants?
Αν η Χρυσή Αυγή είναι πρώτο κόμμα και κυβερνήσει την Ελλάδα, η Ελλάδα θα είναι μια χώρα ευνομούμενη και απόλυτα ασφαλής για όλους.
Because immigrants have been attacked by Golden Dawn supporters. Fact.
Αυτό είναι ψευδές, αυτό δεν ισχύει. Άλλωστε η Χρυσή Αυγή έχει καταδικάσει τη βία επανειλημμένως από όπου και αν προέρχεται.
Golden Dawn supporters have beaten up hundreds of immigrants in recent years. This isn't a lie.
Είχαμε άγριες επιθέσεις, αδιακρίτες μαρτυρίες για το θάνατο του 44χρονου, ακραία στοιχεία κατά μεταναστών που κυκλοφορούσαν εκείνη την ώρα.
In 2013, Pakistani immigrant Luqman Shahzad was murdered by a proud Golden Dawn member. Later that year, anti-fascist rapper Pavlos Fyssas was also killed, causing the arrest of 69 members, including MPs and leader Nikolas Mikaloliakos. Someone who previously called the existence of gas chambers and ovens at Auschwitz a lie. Mikaloliakos has accepted political but not criminal responsibility for Fyssas' murder. The trial is ongoing. Prosecutors allege that the order for the killing came from the top, and if it can be proven, Golden Dawn will lose its status as a political party and be listed as a criminal organization. But that doesn't bother Ilias.
Τα εγκλήματα τα έχουν κάνει οι πολιτικοί μας αντίπαλοι. Εγκλήματα σε βάρος του ελληνικού λαού, αλλά και εγκλήματα σε βάρος της δημοκρατίας. Όταν φυλάκισαν το τρίτο κόμμα της χώρας, αυτό ήταν ένα έγκλημα σε βάρος της δημοκρατίας. Παρά τις φυλακίσεις, όλη η κοινοβουλευτική ομάδα πήγαμε στη φυλακή, καταφέραμε να είμαστε εδώ ισχυροί και να διεκδικούμε μια καλύτερη Ελλάδα.
Πού πας?
Golden Dawn's Ilias was pretty much everything I expected him to be. The guy didn't have a shred of self-doubt in him. And history tends to teach us that when there's an economic squeeze, people tend to turn to men like Ilias
and put them in parliament because they have easy answers and easy villains to blame for the problems that the country is in. At the height of the crisis, almost a third of Greeks were jobless. Some economists say this is higher than in America during the Great Depression. As the economy collapsed all over this beautiful country and repeated attempts were made to fix the problem with bailouts and austerity measures, businesses went bust. I traveled to one factory in Thessaloniki, Greece's second largest city.
In every case that you have a company collapsing, usually workers losing their wages, but also losing their jobs, and nothing comes out positive from this situation if you don't struggle. We're not accepting the debts of the company.
Meet Spiros Skouras, a 46-year-old worker at Viome. This factory was once a hub for chemicals used in the construction industry. In its glory days, it employed 300 people. That's before it went bankrupt and the owners walked away, leaving a pile of unpaid debt. And that was that. Not quite. A couple dozen workers said no, stuck around, and occupied the factory. They now make soap.
These big capital funds and managers do not care about actually the production or the real economy. There is no other way for the workers but to take the productions in their own hands.
So why did you choose this model and not a more, I guess, traditional or conventional model of how to run the place?
Our real experience comes from our own union. So it's a self-organization of the workers in their union, and it's also a democratic way to discuss.
Everyone is paid the same here at Viome. No one is the boss.
This is very cozy. It's extremely tight. It feels like a community. Is that how it feels amongst all of you?
Yes, it does.
Well,
yes. What you see is what we do every day.
Was it like this before the factory was shut down?
Όχι, δεν έχει καμία σχέση αυτό. Το διάλειμμα με το τότε διάλειμμα. Το διάλειμμα τότε ήταν στη μέση της βάρδιας. Το εργοστάσιο δούλευε 3 βάρδιες. Στη μέση του ωραρίου κάθε βάρδιας γινόταν διάλειμμα, ένα 20 λεπτό και ξαναξεκινούσε η παραγωγή. Εδώ δεν συμβαίνει αυτό.
So more or less you have to work like a robot every day.
Is it a fear that someday you'll be sitting here like having lunch and somebody's going to come with a court order and they're going to say, finally we're kicking you out and we're taking over?
So we have our decision that even if police comes here, we are not going to go out so easily.
My last stop is Syntagma Square, the most famous meeting point for Athenians, the front line of the austerity protests. It's here in 2015 that Prime Minister Tsipras called for a referendum, asking Greeks to submit to the Troika or defy it. 62% voted against austerity. Why did your government ignore the democratic will of the people in 2015?
No, we didn't ignore. We had to compromise. It was a big battle with powers far superior than ours.
Is your sovereignty too heavily in the hands of the Troika?
Our sovereignty is limited dramatically since 2010. We are under very strict rules, iron rules.
So you think what Yanis wanted was a big gamble?
It's a big player. But politics is not a game. It's about the lives of 11 million people. You must choose the best options every single moment. You must be radical, but also in a healthy way conservative. It's not all about radicalism and revolution.
Following Syriza's decision to ignore the referendum, Yanis Varoufakis quit.
In me, they found somebody who said, no, I'm not signing. And they freaked out, allow me to use the vernacular. If my Prime Minister at the time had backed me up, as he was saying he was going to, then we would have changed Europe.
So, did he sell out?
He's had a magnificent historic opportunity to help the people of Greece disentangle themselves from an unsustainable debt, and he chose not to do it in order to become an insider, while placating himself and soothing his own conscience by means of a huge, big, fat lie that he's making a difference for the better.
Now Varoufakis is back with a new party, DM25.
It is our duty to bring realistic hope back to this country.
So the way you're going about this now is in order to essentially become Prime Minister of Greece. To do what Tsipras didn't do.
Yeah, well, you know, it sounds like a nightmare to be the Prime Minister of Greece. But then again, it's a dirty job, somebody has to do it.
Greeks are a resilient people who differ, often explosively, on the solutions to their problems. The question now is, will the Greeks bet on Varoufakis?